Okay, welcome to a Wednesday evening stream. We're going to be talking about Logic a little bit, the new 10.8 version. We've had a little bit of time now to see exactly what's going on with it, and I'm curious. I'm curious on what bugs people are finding. This may be just the start of the conversation, and hopefully in the chat, as you watch this later, you'll tell me about some of the bugs that you're finding, because I'm curious. I've run into a few things of late. One of them that I can't seem to repeat is when I was recording with some frozen tracks. So I've got my some of the tracks frozen. I was experimenting, trying to figure out how to get lower latency when using the mastering assistant. And so I was doing things like freezing the tracks and whatnot. And I would freeze the tracks and then go to record an open microphone, and none of the other tracks would be playing. But when I went to just play the tracks without recording, they would play. So I don't know. And then I unfroze everything and refroze, and then it worked. Inconsistencies like that. And I think that for me is one of the most frustrating parts is when there are inconsistencies in behavior. That means if I open up Logic with a client, right, and I'm doing something and it doesn't work exactly as I was hoping, then it just throws off the session. It makes people wonder if the software is working right. It takes away some of the confidence that an engineer might have in using the software. It's not a big deal to unfreeze and refreeze, but it can be in the sense that if you have to do something like that to make it work, that's a little bit of a bummer. So for me, and I don't know how much you know about latency from plugins. I thought it was interesting. We're looking at 3,633 samples. That's the added time to the project with compensation that the mastering assistant adds into the project, which means you can't really do any live recording with the mastering assistant on, nor should you really want to, I suppose, partially because the analysis of the mastering assistant happens non-real time. And so if you're recording new things into there, it's going to throw off what you want to do, and you'll have to reanalyze anyway. But I thought if I'm working on a project and I wanted to add an additional part of some sort, then I have to pretty much turn off the mastering assistant, listen as it was without it, add the part, because it just adds too much delay, too much latency to make it work. Putting it into low latency mode, interestingly enough, doesn't actually deactivate the mastering plugin. It would. Let me unfreeze all the rest of those real quick. Those were just frozen for a second. Putting it into... That's not bad, actually. Weird. Well, maybe... let me unhide a couple of... Oh, no, they're unhidden. Man, that's it's not bad. Although, here's a bug that I think is interesting that you're all going to see right this moment. If you look at my tracks, I've got instrument 1, which is this. And then I have instrument 6 right here, which is showing up there. These other tracks, they have the H for being hidden, but they're not actually being hidden right now. But they're not showing up. Well, now they are. It's like for a second there, It's like that. That's another inconsistency. They were showing up in the top part, but they weren't showing up in the mixer at all. And now when I put into low latency mode, you'll see the pitch correction and those buses, which I'm not sure in this case why these three are being tagged as needing to be deactivated when we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other tracks going to the exact same bus. And we have these three pitch corrections, but then we have 2 more of the same channel, essentially the same channel setup, not actually 3 others. That kind of stuff drives me a little bonkers. I get with the low latency mode and delay compensation that certain things add time, but why would 3 of those add time but not the other 3? And the low latency monitoring mode doesn't do anything with the mastering assistant. It doesn't deactivate it or anything like that. Interesting. We're going to find out how some of these things play out over time. I think that anytime there's a new thing like the mastering assistant, there's some things that have to be sorted out to a certain degree. And so, that's fine. I am going to try real quick to replicate the view thing I just went through. I mean, they weren't there a second ago, even though they were up there. I don't know. That's interesting. Now it's working. Inconsistencies. Okay, so there's a few watching, and I'm assuming more will be watching after the fact. What are the bugs that you're facing? What are the things that you're running into which are causing some issues? I'm curious because I think that there's a lot of question marks with this. Anytime that there's a new piece of software version, it's like, what bugs did we get this time? So I'm curious. Let me know, because I do think that I'd be interested if you're running into anything. Omkar RS, hello, how's it going? Have you been finding any bugs in the software? Let me know. Trying to think of, there were a couple other small things that I've had some issues with. Certainly nothing major. Oh, I know one that let me show you, see if I can replicate it. That's again the problem. If you can't replicate it, it's hard to report it, because that means nobody else can replicate it as well. But so there's this thing I do with my tracks where I create the arrangement first, and then I add like a drummer track, new drummer track, and it brings out parts that match. So an intro part, a verse part, a chorus part, a bridge part, etc., right? And each of those So in the past, I've been able to, for instance, choose a different style. So we'll do roots songwriter. And it would change everything down the drummer path. So it would change all of them. Now, it goes back to the original. Not the original drum kit, but all the patterns are from the original drummer. And so we're facing an issue with this where it doesn't work like it used to. You can't as easily do the same thing. I'm going to see if I can select them all, and then if he'll do it that way. I don't know. So let's do songwriter, roots, songwriter. And it changed them all that way. I don't remember that being a thing. And did I just delete my initial intro? I did. Okay. So let me select the first two and change this to... So those are changing, but the other ones are not changing. Let's deselect everything and change it all and see if that's... It's just acting different. Maybe that's not a bug as much as it is a feature. So it changed them. Well, they were all selected that time. Let me try that one more time. Oh, it's not even letting me. That's interesting. Oof. If I go down, just select off of it, it won't even let me do it. So it has to be selected. But if you just have one of them selected, it's a different behavior pattern than I would use in the past. Anyway. Hello, Adam from Minneapolis. So Omkar is saying, do we have Final Cut Pro FX packs and Apple Loops in 10.8? I don't believe so. I haven't seen any of them in there. And so you still have to go over to do it in Final Cut, I believe. Yeah, I don't see any of those things in there. But it's easy to go to Final Cut Pro and bring things back and forth, which is nice. At least it has been. How's the weather in Minneapolis? Is it getting cold and snowy yet? I know my parents live in Michigan, and one of my brothers lives up off of Lake Michigan, near, I guess, not right off of it, but they're saying up to 2 feet of snow from lake effect snow. Woo! That's a bunch of snow falling. So that's cool. So the difference, I would say, between some of these things is it a bug or is it a feature that we just don't fully understand? In this case, I just realized, sometimes if I just have one of those selected, it's just going to do that. But I don't think I've ever had that issue exactly like that happen. I'm going to have to remember to click on the track so everything gets selected when I make those changes. It's going to be a piece of cake to remember because I've gotten... And I don't know why that just opened up. Oof. Okay. Not sure why that opened up the piano roll, but unexpected things sometimes. Adam says, thank you for having this live stream. I have no contributions as I have just updated to Sonoma last night and I've been using Vienna Ensemble Pro. So there's no science because who knows why. Cool. No snow, real snow, cold. Okay, well, it'll come eventually. Minneapolis tends to be a pretty chilly place. Was there last, January for a few days when you all had that massive cold front come in. But, that's just what happens there. A few other things are the same quirkiness from other versions of Logic. I haven't really noticed too much. Trying to think. There was one or two other small things I've noticed. Nothing massive. Oh, and you're facing a bug in an old version, Omkar. Yeah, well, we all know there's been bugs in lots of versions. For sure. Trying to think. I've seen online people talking. There have been people who are saying that, for instance, a track, when they create a new track, it comes with automation mode already engaged. I'm surprised by that one a little bit, but it could be that they've somehow managed to save a track with that engaged as the default. So let's see. Store as user defaults. I don't know. That didn't seem to do it for me. But I don't know. So, and I've heard people talking obviously about third-party software, some of it working, some of it not working, which I think is interesting. So with some loop, you're having some issues with loops, difference in volume. Yeah, not surprised in some ways. I've heard people talking about some of that. I don't know when there's a bug. If it's a bug, that means we're not going to be able to necessarily fix it if it's built into the software. And so there's that to consider, right? But I don't use a ton of the loops. I mean, there's a lot of them, 31,584 loops. And so there's quite a few of the loops happening. I've used more of them of late because of the new Beat Breaker and because of the new Sample Alchemy, both of which can add a lot of new life into those things. But I don't know of a lot of bugs yet with those two tools. I think they've been working pretty solidly for me, which is kind of nice. You never know. I'm sure we're going to find something with some of those in terms of some functionality issues. Overall, though, I haven't noticed a major hit on my CPU. I mean, I'm not running massive session right here, but we're looking at hardly any usage of anything. I mean, it's really efficient right now. Oh, there's an interesting screen artifact on my screen. What is that from? I don't think that's from... Yeah, that was from something else, not from Logic. A little glitchy with some of the... I use the zoom feature to sometimes pop into different things. And that's an operating system thing. It's not a Logic problem. Okay, so Omkar is saying, will you please search auto in Loop Browser? Sure. Auto. So we have automated 3, and there's an automobile crash FX1. So there is something there that's a sound effect. Cool. Let's see what I do if I do effects then. So there's like 1,600 things that show up with effects in the name. Yeah, I don't see the one you're looking for with the door closing. I think I just was watching a video earlier today about new version of Final Cut Pro coming, but it's not out yet. I'm hoping we're going to get that music feature that Final Cut Pro for iPad has, where you lay in the music and it adapts itself to the length of your project. I'm hoping we get that for the full version of Final Cut Pro. That seems pretty useful. But it's not out yet. that would be 10.7 for Final Cut. And then we'll see if anything gets added that's useful with that one. I don't think it's out. I'm doing another search. Final Cut Pro. It just says 10.6.10. Okay. So not out yet. When it's out, I think there'll be some additional audio functionality and some different music functionality things. Cool. Cigarette lighter. Yeah, I don't. There's nothing with that first word, so if I spelled it right. So we'll see. I think that I feel like overall the new things that have been added have been relatively stable. But again, I'm noticing a bunch of these inconsistencies where, one time I do something and all of a sudden something unexpected happens as a result. I like toggle it for a second and then it's working and I can't repeat it. So that's not exactly a bug, but it means that it's buggy. That the interface and the way that we use it sometimes can be not consistent in its in how it's acting. That doesn't mean that there's a repeatable bug that they could go in and just solve. Because if I can't get it to repeat, then I don't even know how you would figure it out. You'd have to have something that you can do one thing every time and all of a sudden it does something different and then they can fix it. And with those, that makes it tricky, right? It makes it tricky because all of a sudden we need to be able to reach for a feature and have it just work, and perhaps it doesn't every single time. And so that drives me a little bit bonkers. But I don't know. I don't know how bad of a thing that really is or not. If you can get what you need done, which for the moment I am able to do, then I think that's not a bad thing. But I was hoping for more of you to say, "Ooh, we've run into this," or "Ooh, we've run into that." This isn't working or that isn't working. And so far, we haven't had too much of that type of engagement at this particular video. Let me know. There's a few more of you watching right now. An additional call for the bugs if you've run into any, if you're on the newest version. And I'd love to hear what those are. Because, as always, that's what I'm interested in. Adam is asking, are there any functions in Logic 10.8 that utilize MIDI 2.0? And yes, that is definitely something that was talked about in the updates. One of the things I'm having an issue with right now in testing that is that I don't have any MIDI 2.0 external devices. In fact, there's not that many of them. My main MIDI controller doesn't have any MIDI 2.0 capabilities. MIDI 2.0 is different than MPE in many ways, although there's some of that functionality which is bleeding over. But if we go into our settings, you'll see MIDI 2.0 as an option for turning it on. That was there before, so that's not a new thing. And so that was we could turn on MIDI 2.0 in the previous versions. It's been around for a little while. So MIDI 2.0, let me simplify it a little bit. There's two parts to it. One of them is the it can communicate back and forth. So for instance, if you hook up a device that's MIDI 2.0, theoretically in the future, it's going to be able to say, oh, here's all of my patches and my naming of all of the stuff on the instrument, and you'll be able to communicate with it. And it will give Logic information about itself that current MIDI doesn't do before MIDI 2.0. And so that's useful. The other part of it is that I believe we're going to be getting higher resolution things, but like a MIDI keyboard is going to have more than 128 distinct steps of velocity. And so there's that part of it, but there's very few MIDI 3.0 keyboards out there, and ones that are still, more expensive, and from what I'm hearing aren't, they're not doing anything amazingly different in some ways. There were a few other things. They were calling it one of the best pieces of software right now that's ready for MIDI 3.0 or 2.0. I keep on saying 3.0. 2.0. So now enhancements choose how MIDI 2.0 data is displayed. So Logic Pro settings view. Display MIDI data as 1.0% or 0 to 127.9. Interesting. So instead of the 0 to 127, we could either do it as the 0.0 to 127.9 or as a percentage. So that is different. I'm curious. Let me just go to my pointer. Actually, velocity maybe. So that's just giving me the whole steps of MIDI 1.0. I feel like there's still some missing pieces with 2.0 in terms of the finer resolution. Maybe not all the instruments are capable of it. There's so many questions I still have that aren't exactly clear. Dr. Voodoo says, I experienced a bug yesterday with project notes. When I set the font size and close out of the font menu window, the font size reverts back to what it was. That sounds like a bug for sure. Let's change this up to 18 because close out of the font menu. It didn't do it when I just did. Oh, yeah, it did it. Let me see if I copy and paste down. It's going as I go down. You're saying, oh, done. Done. It looks like I was expecting it to do. So I'm not seeing the experience you have with the font size. It could be. That's the problem with a bug, right? And that's why tracking down bugs can be so difficult. Partially because it could be doing it repeatably on your computer, but it doesn't happen on mine. We have different computers. If we're on the same version of Logic and the same version of the OS 10 or OS, the Mac operating system, can't say 10. Then certainly there's some question marks to all of that. what are we on? I'm like, I like saying 10 for things. We're not on 10 for almost anything. So Sonoma's 14. You know, I'm on 14.0. And interesting. And that's the other thing too, that sometimes I do face things on certain projects. So I've had this thing with it was like just one sound or one weird quirk about the way a project would the volume. It's like the volume of some of the tracks would always be low and jump around, and I could never track down any automation issues or anything. I would import those tracks into a new project. It would still do it. And so I don't know like what got stuck in the data, but something got stuck someplace. And then when I would do a brand new project, it would never happen. So you're on Ventura 13.6. Yeah, so we're on a different operating system too. But you said you just opened up a new one and it wasn't working. Or it wasn't looking the same. So I don't know. I mean, that's inconsistency. I think right now what I'm facing more than anything are not repeatable bugs, but just inconsistent behavior from the software. And so I feel like that's the part that I'm the most frustrated with. Random windows popping up every once in a while, or latency when I don't have any reason for it for a brief period of time, or some spikes on the CPU without being able to figure out why. It's like all of these things change what's happening. And so if enough of those things are happening, then it just feels buggy. But if you can navigate, I don't mind like some of the biggest bugs that people have talked about over the years. It's if you know that something's going to happen and you can sidestep it, that's perfect for me. But if there's unpredictability, that's what I really don't like. So, the newest tools. I'm going to bring up another beat breaker for a second. I was watching some training on this the other day. I love this tool, but it's not everything was 100% like super obvious with it, which I like. I like having to like actually learn something, but I was just curious about some of the presets. So let me find one of the ones that I was make a fill. Those ones right there. And I wanted to know, man, I got to figure that out. How to input beat speed 50%. Where's the function that gives us the sub beat on that? That's what I wanted to know right there. Oh, I'm just thinking about this while we're in a lull for a second. I haven't run into really any major bugs with this thing, but there's certainly, that's going to drive me crazy. I need to figure it out. Ooh. Undo. There we go. Oof. Side to side puts those up and down. But what gives us the step? That's what I want. Is that a repeat? That might be the repeat. Actually, that probably is. Okay, cool. I figured it out, I think. Yeah. Okay, cool. So it's just the repeat mechanism showing up in the time mechanism. Okay, cool. Ah, this thing is so cool. Oof. We need to do a whole live stream just on the beat breaker at some point. Bounce track in place is off. So what is it doing right now? Let me duplicate a track here. Bounce. Let's see. Bounce track in place. New track. Fine. Mute. Okay. Let's unmute that thing for a second. And let me do a phase invert on both of those channels. Something's off. I mean, maybe that's what you're talking about. Cheese and crackers. No, that's not. So that's something different. The way that MIDI instrument is playing is, when you do the downbeat, it doesn't actually play the downbeat. So that timing difference is not off. But when I just did a phase reverse on those, it's not doing any cancellation at all. It means there's something very different about them. Awesome. So I need to look more into that, but that certainly rings as something that stinks. Something that stinks for sure. Theoretically, Bounce in Place should be an exact copy of the original. They sound the same, but something's definitely weird about that. Okay, well, hopefully this starts a dialogue. I want, if you're watching now or later, put in the comments the bugs you're running into. I want to make a series of short videos about some of the bugs that people are facing to see if we can repeat them and report them. So let me know, because there's nothing is constant except death taxes and logic bugs. So make sure that we're talking about them so we can ask for them to be fixed. That's where we're going to end the stream tonight. Thanks for those of you who are watching. We just started getting a crowd, but next time turn on the notifications so you can show up when you do it. Dr. Voodoo, which test do you want me to do for the PDC? Plug-in delay compensation. Do you have a test in mind? I'm on hold. I like being on hold. Oh, let's see. Ooh, my recording latency is 5.7 milliseconds on the output. That's because of my streaming setup, though. And I run often at 32 sample buffer size, but not with the beat breaker. That breaks the beat breaker, which shouldn't happen, but it does. Oh, I don't have it set to all. Let's turn it to all. I think I was messing around with that the other night. Well, actually, Dr. Voodoo, put that in the chat at some point or in a comment to this. Then I can do like a full test of what you're talking about, not on a stream, because I do need to end the stream right now anyway. But put it someplace in a message, and then I want to experiment with what you're thinking.